Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite Pokemon that has returned in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and that is ALOLAN Marowak. ALOLAN Marowak is awesome. Not only is its typing amazing, Fire and Ghost, but the Thick Club still works on it. Its design looks great, and we're going to talk about it. This is probably one of the most splashable mons right now in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So ALOLAN Marowak has a few things going for it. As I mentioned before, its typing is really nice because it allows it to check prominent Pokemon like Volcarona, Magnezone, Rotom Heat, just to name a few that Marowak can actually check. Because of the Fire and Ghost, it resists a lot of their actual attacks, and it does threaten them back with very, very strong attacks due to its signature item, the Thick Club, which doubles its attack stat. So it goes from base 80 attack, to over 500 basically. Not 80 to 500, but the actual number goes from max attack is 284, and then it goes over 500. So it's amazing for Marowak, especially when it has some great abilities too going for it. So we're going to talk about the first one real quick, and this is one of the ones that's probably the deadliest Marowak, and that is the Trick Room abusing Marowak. This takes advantage of Marowak's base 45 speed. It's very, very slow. However, like I said, it hits like a truck. And Marowak also got a nice little buff this generation in Poltergeist, a new ghost-type physical attack, and it's stronger than its signature move, Shadow Bone. Though there are times where you are going to want to run Shadow Bone, and we'll mention that a little bit as we go further into this video. But one of the cool things about Marowak is that it has Flare Blitz as a move, and it has the Rocket ability, so you can use Flare Blitz on this set without taking any recoil from the actual move because of your Rocket ability. Poltergeist and Boomerang. So this is the type of set that just takes advantage of Trick Room, right? So you're going to want Trick Room setters like Porygon 2, which can Trick Room and teleport out, Magearna, which can Trick Room and Volt Switch out. There are a lot of other Trick Room setters that you can use for this Pokemon too. Hatterene is another one that comes to mind, Reuniclus. Slowbro is actually a really good Trick Room setter with Marowak because it resists the water type attacks coming out at Marowak, and Marowak basically can break through the grass types that Slowbro doesn't like too much, such as Pharaoh Seed and Rillaboom. So again, this is just a really offensive Marowak. You want Brave Nature and 0 speed IVs because you want to be as slow as possible in the Trick Room, since the idea of Trick Room is that the slower Pokemon move first. So that's what you want for Marowak. And then you have Flare Blitz and Poltergeist. Poltergeist, be careful about using it because, again, it only works if your opponent has an item. So if your team has knockoff spam, and I said we get into it, but we'll get into it now. But if your team has knockoff spam, you might want to run Shadow Bone over Poltergeist, just because if they don't have an item, you can't hit them with their signature move. One example is if you knock off a Slowbro, if a Slowbro is running no item. There are some Slowbros out there that are running no item because a lot of Marowaks are running Poltergeist. You won't be able to hit it with your best move. And then your third move is Boomerang. This can actually be swapped throughout the video. I mentioned Boomerang or Earthquake a lot, but you can actually swap it to either or. A Boomerang obviously is a 2-turn move that isn't weakened in power by Grassy Terrain, and Grassy Terrain is semi-common at the moment because Grassy Surge Rillaboom is definitely one of the new waves, and but the trade-off is that it can miss, whereas Earthquake is a consistent, always hits 100 base power, but of course it is weaker in Grassy Terrain, so you want to decide behind that. And then your last move is either Swords Dance or Substitute. Now, Marowak is the type of Pokemon that can just come in under Trick Room and get a kill no matter what. You're either going to knock out or you're going to 2-hit KO basically everything. Like even max defense, Mandibuzz will be 2-hit KO by Flare Blitz. Pokemon like Toad died of Flare Blitz into Poltergeist, depending, So honestly, the last move is kind of up to you. You can go for Substitute if your opponent attempts to outplay you by like going, let's say, from Pharaoh Seed or Pharaoh Thorn rather into Slowbro, and they have like 1 turn of Trick Room left and they double back. You can go for Substitute, which is relatively safe. It allows you to get a free attack after, but if you don't want to do that, you can run Swords Dance. Honestly, I don't think the last move really matters too much because you are rarely clicking it. For the most part, you're clicking Flare Blitz and Poltergeist unless they have something like Toxapex, which Boomerang does hit for harder damage. The next set we have is more of a stealth rocking variant. Now, again, I did mention in the beginning of the video that Magnezone has some very, very good resistances. It resists Fairy and Steel, Fire and Bug, right? So some amazing Pokemon. that it does. And it also is immune, by the way, to electric if you use Lightning Rod, which is so good for Marowak. I really wish that the Thick Club doubled both its attack and special attack, just because Lightning Rod gives you special attack raises, and you're able to block things like Volt Switch and Discharge, obviously. So Magnezone, Magearna, Rotom, none of them can Volt Switch on you. So this would have been really cool because Marowak actually has an amazing... I know this is kind of like a tangent that doesn't really have to do too much with... You can see the set right there, right? So I'm just going to talk. But Marowak is such an amazing special move pool, right? It has like Ancient Power, Blizzard, Fire Blast, Ice Beam, just this Shadow Ball. Like, it has so many... And Thunderbolt. Like, it has so many good special attacks. But unfortunately, you're limited to physical. That's not unfortunate, though. Obviously, Marowak is fantastic at physical attacking. So again, this is a more of a stealth rocking set, and the idea behind it is that you have that Lightning Rod, so again you can check Pokemon like Rotom, Magearna, Magnezone, and you naturally check Pokemon like Volcarona, which is why you're still running 248 HP. We have 24 speed EVs, allowing you to outspeed minimum speed of Powdon, so defensive of Powdon, and the rest was just put into attack. The special defense just helps out with some Volcarona calcs from like Flamethrower, but and like taking hits better from Magearna either. Watch out for Life Orb, Shadow Ball, Magearna. That is something that sometimes ran on Trick Room just for opposing Marowak, so be careful about that. But Fire Punch is a preferred move over Flare Blitz here, just because you do have Lightning Rod, so you no longer have Rock Head to protect you from recoil. And then we have both Poltergeist and Shadow Bone. And as I mentioned earlier, part of the reason that we have Shadow Bone on this set is because my third move is Bone Meringue, but again, it could be Earthquake. But one of the good partners for Marowak, I think, is Rillaboom. Obviously resisting the water type attacks coming at Marowak, whereas Marowak is resisting the fire and ice type attacks coming at Rillaboom, so they pair really well together. But of course, the trade-off of having grassy terrain is that Earthquake is weakened in power, so you have Bone Meringue there. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, Rillaboom is a Pokemon that does have knockoff. Now, if you knock off a Pokemon like Corviknight, if you knock off a Ferrothorn, obviously those are Pokemon you could Fire Punch anyway, but even if you knock off like a Slowbro just because it wants to pivot in and expects you to knock off because they have a Dragapult out and they want to take the hit because they could take 2 hits because Slowbro is just that defensive, that bulky, you have Shadow Bone as an option. So again, this really does depend on your team. One of the teams that I ran with Marowak had like Crocodile, and it had Tangrowth, and Tangrowth is another great grass type partner because it just pivots in on all the attacks. It also pivots in on Urshifu, or Urshifu, however you want to say it. Wicked Blows with Rocky Helmet, so I could take it. So it's a really good partner with this Pokemon. But that's why I have Shadow Bone, just because if you use this and you have multiple knockoff users, don't use Poltergeist, in my opinion, even though it is a lot stronger than Shadow Bone, and there's some crazy calcs out there with this Pokemon. I don't use it. And then your last move is either Stealth Rock or Swords Dance. Now, Marowak has that Mamoswine syndrome, as in it's the Pokemon that much rather be attacking than clicking Stealth Rock. So much like on Mamoswine, I do not like running Stealth Rock on Marowak, but just fits, man. It's such a good Pokemon, right? That it will have multiple turns to attack freely, and sometimes you want to go for rocks. That's it. Sometimes you do want to go for Stealth Rock, and if your team desperately needs them, feel free to put them on Marowak, because again, this last move is rarely ever clicked. But if you don't want to use Stealth Rock, you can use Swords Dance, and that's the reason why we have 24 speed EVs, because if you Swords Dance up, you definitely want to be faster than Lisa and Hippowdon, right? So cool thing about having, basically near max HP. We have 248, by the way, for our Stealth Rock number, so we can switch in multiple times. The Stealth Rock, we switch in one more than we would normally without that. It helps with Volcarona, right? A Volcarona does not 2-hit KO you with Psychic, so that's pretty cool. Like a neutral Psychic does not 2-hit KO you. So that's really, really nice for Marowak. And neither does a 2-hit KO with like, Fire Blast into Psychic. So that's just something to keep in mind. Of course, this is not considering boosted Volcarona, but you can use Swords Dance if you want to attempt to use it as a sweeper. But my favorite one, if you're actually using Swords Dance, is a faster Marowak, which we have as the last set. And this one can be Jolly or Adamant. The last one was Adamant Nature. The one before that was Brave Nature. But this one can be Jolly or Adamant. Now, some of the pros of Jolly Nature are that you outspeed Adamant Azumarill and Adamant Conkeldurr. Adamant Azumarill, obviously, if it's Choice Band, does threaten you with Aqua Jet. But if it's like a Belly Drum variant, or if it wants to knock off your Thick Club, that's something to keep in mind, right? Marowak is a Pokemon that always wants its item. If it doesn't have its Thick Club, it goes back to base 80 attack. So it's very weak. After that, it's a nuke, right? So with its item. But Fast SD has the, advantage of being faster than... also min speed Mana Buzz, but yeah, being faster than Pokemon like Adamant Conkeldurr and Adamant Azumarill, those are basically Pokemon that almost always run Adamant. So you can just make yourself you know, at home with that Jolly number. Outspeed them at +2. You knock them out with either Shadow Bone or Poltergeist. There are Slash. Again, Fire Punch is there because you want to have that Lightning Rod. And, of course, we have Bone Meringue or Earthquake as the actual attack as well. But, yeah, Fast SD aims more to sweep. You can run Adamant if you want to. The good thing about Marowak is I think, honestly, EV spreads are very customizable on this thing, except for, I think, Trick Room. Trick Room should always run, like, basically max HP and max attack, just because you want to have that biggest damage off it. It's an offensive playstyle, right? So it's not meant to switch into things. It's meant to, you set up Trick Room, you get that Pokemon in, and you take KOs from your opponent. So that's the idea behind Marowak. But again, you can customize it. I have seen some people run heavy duty boots. I have seen some people run leftovers. Honestly, when Pheromosa was around back in Sun and Moon, I also did very similar to that, but I also had to deal with Pheromosa and Tapu Koko, right? So I mean, that could be a better check to Pokemon like Magnezone, Rotom Heat, Volcarona, whatever, right? And if you want to do that, you can run something with like Knockoff and Toxic. I don't have a set for it because I don't think it's very good. You can run leftovers that, but you can run like Knockoff and Toxic and use it as full-on support. But I kind of feel like at this point in the metagame, it really does just waste Marowak's potential. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for you guys today. I had a video up earlier today where we used a really cool sticky web Klefki. It was amazing, honestly, with Envy as well. So you guys want to go and check it out, feel free to. Subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. I have a lot of stuff coming out, Wi-Fi battles as well. I got Showdown lives and all that stuff. I feature these Pokemon. I've used Marowak multiple times. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Goodbye, my friends. Have a good one.